We'll be turning, of course, back into the book of Numbers. Book of the Bible with a census at the beginning and the end of the book. A lot of numbers. The number of Israelites, and get thinking about how many times they've murmured and complained throughout the book of Numbers. All of them start to add up over time. And I started out calling Numbers a book about camping, but now it's turned into a trip more associated with instead of them camping, they're on a mission now. Now that they've got the wandering part out of the way. I'm trying to find my note where there we go. Start at 9:21. And we will pick up at chapter 20. Starting about verse 9 is where I'll start this morning in the book of Numbers, chapter 20. And if you'll remember, we had gotten to the point where those Israelites had commenced their complaining again, of course. This time it was about water. And Moses, he takes the brunt of every time they got murmuring and complained. Poor Moses, he seems like they want to blame him and Aaron about everything, They don't think about the fact that they had the opportunity at Kadesh Barnea to walk right into the promised land. And following the advice of the 10 spies who gave a bad report, they ended up wandering in the wilderness for about 38 years as we're getting near the end of this trip. And so, like I said, they won't blame Moses and Aaron, but it's their own fault that they ended up in this shape, wandering in the wilderness, thinking about this wilderness, a dry, desolate place. They put themselves in this own boat here. They could have been in a land of milk and honey already. They, as a people, have chosen this. That's where they ended up at, in this place. Inhospitable, not inviting. But God is still faithful to look after these people, even though they've chosen this route. They didn't take the promised land. God is still faithful. He's there for them. He's providing food, and they got sustenance. They got water there. They complaining they ain't got it at this moment, but if you think about it, they're still standing there. They're still able to complain, Instead of being thankful for still being alive, they're picking up to complain again. And not to mention the fact that God has repeatedly, over and over, looked after them, provided for them, performed miracles that kept them as a people. But yet here we are, and so I'm going to start chapter 20, verse 9 this morning. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. We'll read 10 and 11. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. But in the preceding verses, God had instructed Moses to speak to the rock. And through his own frustration, which is, who wouldn't be at this point? Calling them a bunch of rebels and complaining. I'm surprised he didn't just reach out with a stick and hit one of them over the head, to be honest with you. I could see that coming from within him. And, of course, he's made some other mistakes with this comment he makes as he hit this rock. Number one, God told him to speak. God was going to speak water to be provided for these people. But Moses also says, must we fetch you water. So, it's not him and Aaron standing there that's providing any of this. This is all by gift from God right here when this water is provided. So this is going to mess things up for Moses as he moves forward as we go on through this book of Numbers. But it just shows the man to me how great he was. I mean, I know he's great. He can still crack and make a mistake like that. And this is with him directly communicating with God with these actions that's going on here. But he's still a man. He ain't perfect. And it shows here. And another thing here, think about it. Even though God told him to speak and he strikes, but God is glorified here when this happens. This is still God providing the water. Even though Moses struck the rock, not spoke to it, it's still the action of God who provides this water. And this glorifies God, showing him that he is totally set apart. He's able to provide more than any man can there for these people. All right. So now I'm going to read 12 through 13. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believe me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I has given them. Like I said, there's what we're about to read. What I was telling you is Moses is not going to lead these people into the promised land. That's going to be his punishment, his penalty for what just happened as far as him striking the rock instead of speaking to the rock. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. So, there again, this Meribah, it's just means strife, just more icing on the cake for what the situation held here. Is they were in a situation of tension and strife, but God still comes through and provides water for them, even though they've stooped to this level again in this journey. And Moses, through his frustration, he ends up making a mistake. So now I'm going to read 14 through 22. All right. And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom. All right. So after this incident here with the water, lagging of water, they're about to be on the march. And like I said, I've changed my thoughts on it from a camping trip. It's more like a mission. It's like a military mission now, because we're with these Israelites and they're heading north. But if you'll think about where we're at Kadesh Barnea, it wasn't that far a journey from Kadesh Barnea right into the promised land if you look at a map at those times. But they couldn't go straight up like that, up the King's Highway, if you'll remember. So they're going to have to go, as we're going to see, they're going to have to go around, I'll call it to the right, which is going to be the east if you're facing north from where they're at. And they're going to have to take a route, go around this kingdom of Edom. And so here we go again, having to take the long way around. But through this long way around, we're going to have some battles up through here as we get into the northern part of the country. And so it's turned into a military campaign to me as I read the chapters moving forward here. And you got to remember, this is 38 years later. Think about the condition of these people. Don't just look at it, go over it. But we started out with generation one. Those people had been down there in Egypt. I like to think of it to myself when I'm reading the Bible. I like to look at it as sinful Egypt. It was a place of false gods, many gods, gods for every day of the week, it seems like, or every little circumstance that come along. These people were superstitious down there to a big degree. And as we read in this Canaan land that we're going to, I see the same thing with these people. They got gods for everything, We'll become familiar with numerous gods as we get into Canaan. And some of them just really far out there for me, how people can get in their mind in that condition to make up these gods for these different situations that they face. I think being exposed as a Christian, even from a young age, to the one true God, a holy God, not one that sits on a pedestal carved by man's hands, but a real God. This stuff seems far-fetched to me, and I'm sure it does to a lot of other believers. To me, it just seems like a joke. But to these people, they're superstitious, you got to remember, and they take this stuff seriously. And we're going into this chapter coming up, we're going to meet a strange character, Balaam, and we're going to have I call a superstitious king, keeps wanting him to give him a blessing, and he, of course, they believe in these weird gods and stuff, But as I think about this generation that's left Egypt, this is 38 years later, you would think over this period of time that they would be a little more in line with thinking of how they should be. But we just got through, this is 38 years later and they're already complaining about water again. And so as we move forward, we're going to see how they have progressed. I won't call it their development for this generation. God said he's going to let this generation go in because the first generation, they backed up at the spies situation and they didn't go into the land. So then God punished them, said, well, you ain't going, but your children will. So remember, these are this next generation that's going into this, on this battle march up into the northern part. So that's where we're at. And I think they're a little more hardy, of course. They've been raised out here in this wilderness for 38 years. So they're going to be a tougher group, I believe. But you got to remember, too, it's God could have took that first group in there if it had went. So maybe these guys will fall more in line, have a little more faith in God, and follow his orders, the way God wants things done. And we'll see, of course, they're going to get there. So we're come up to Edom. All right, now I said that, 14 through 22. And Moses sent message to the king of Edom. Yeah, thus saith thy brother Israel. And thy brother, the reason that's saying that, who was the brother of Jacob? Esau. So this here's family in this kingdom of Edom coming up here, the Edomites. Although they're distant cousins and they didn't go down to they didn't end up in Egypt like Jacob's family did. They've been up here in these mountains of Edom all this time, and they're still cousins, and you'd think that maybe they'd let them pass through their land, but we'll get there. I'm getting ahead of it. So anyway, Edom, south and east of the Dead Sea, descendants of Esau, like I said, and they're the cousins that didn't go to Egypt. And, of course, if you'll remember, too, Esau, with this group of people here, Esau, Jacob's brothers, of course, if y'all remember, he married outside of the wishes of like Jacob and his family would have wanted him to. He married into the women of the community, if we move forward. And I think actually one of them, they're all considered the Canaanite wives. And then, of course, the Bible, in my study here, they think one of them was a cousin who would have been a daughter of Ishmael, if you'll remember when Ishmael was pushed out from that area. So, he's got family in that area there where Esau may have married into that as well. So Esau was just kind of rebellious is what I'm saying. So this nation of Edom, cousins to Jacob, and those who ended up in Egypt started their roots from a rebellious man to start with, Esau, in this country of Edom. All right. And how our fathers went down into Egypt. Yeah. How our fathers went down into Egypt, that's Jacob, and we have dwelled in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians vexed us and our fathers. Of course, Egypt's made prisoners slaves out of them. And when we cried unto the Lord, he heard our voice and sent an angel, and hath brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of thy border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through thy country. We will not pass through the fields or through the vineyards, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway. And this is going to be a way it's more traveled. This is that route and corridor that I was telling you about would have been a direct access into the land of milk and honey. This was a real well-traveled area closer to the Mediterranean Sea from Egypt up into that country. They're wanting to travel up through this, what they call the King's Highway. And you think cousins, of course, would let them go through there, but we're going to find out otherwise. And you know, they're promising not to bother the land or any of the water and stuff like that as they go. We will not turn to the right nor to the left until we have passed thy borders. And Edom said unto him, Thou shalt not pass by me, lest I come out against thee with the sword. Okay, so Edom's saying, no, you're not coming through our land. You're not taking this easy route. If you do, we're going to attack you with the sword. And the children of Israel said unto him, We will go by the highway, and if I and my cattle drink of thy water, then I will pay for it. I will only, without doing anything else, go through on my feet. And he said, Thou shalt not go through. And Edom came out against him with much people and with a strong hand. So they're showing their might here. You come through this king's highway, we're going to jump on you. We're going to declare war on you. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border, wherefore Israel turned away from him. And the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh and came unto Mount Hor. All right, so they're going to have to go, like I told you, the long way around. They can't go up the easy route, the King's Highway. So now let me read 23 through 29. All right. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the coast of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given unto the children of Israel, because ye rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. And that's where him and Moses was standing there, and they struck the rock instead of speaking to the rock. Take Aaron and Eleazar. Eleazar's Aaron's son, so he's going to be next in line to be the high priest, and bring them up unto Mount Hor. And strip Aaron of his garments. And this is his priestly garments. You remember he had decorative type garments that he was supposed to wear for his work he done at the temple and all this stuff. So take his type of garments and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered unto his people and shall die there. And Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up into Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them upon Eleazar his son. And Aaron died there in the top of the mount, and Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they mourned for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel. So, you know, Aaron at times had his issues with God, but God got him through this far. I mean, you remember when Moses was up on Mount Sinai, they, of course, had the issue with the golden calf. And I think Aaron just gave in to the complaints and the multitude of people that was there at that time and probably didn't know how to handle that situation. And I'd say it'd be hard-pressed for any average man to have done any better than him, because you got to remember, this wasn't just a handful of people here when they were at Mount Sinai. This is a large mass of people here, and when you get a crowd like that gathering, it's just mayhem and madness. And so anyway, chapter 21, this is where we're going to our Exodus, our military campaign is nearing its end. There are going to be some Canaanites destroyed, more murmuring. We're going to read about the attack of the fiery serpents, and get in and read about a real strange situation where they're attacked by fiery serpents for their complaining, and God through Moses lifts up a brass serpent amongst them, and it's really strange, to erect a serpent amongst the serpents. But anyway, I'll do the best I can with that, and we're going to have some travel details in this chapter, and then I think we got another battle towards the end of it. So let's jump in with verses 1 through 3. And when King Arad the Canaanite, which dwelled in the south, heard tell that Israel came by the way of the spies, then he fought against Israel and took some of them prisoners. So here, before we even get rolling good up to the next stop, this king here, he's already gotten word of who's coming through this part of the country. And so intelligence is passing around that, hey, there's a large group of people coming north, and and there's some instances where they have been victorious in battle. And so they start to, these kings are worried about, of course, losing their power, I guess. So he's attacked. He went ahead and pulled the trigger first, so to speak, and attacked them. And Israel vowed a vow unto the Lord and said, if thou wilt indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. Well, at least this time they didn't just take off like they did one of the previous times after Moses had told them that, hey, God's not with you on this battle. Don't take off. If y'all remember, they lost that battle. But this time they've vowed a vow and they're communicating with God now that they've been attacked. And so we will go destroy these people, but at least they're going to God first before they just take off like they did. All right. And the Lord hearkened to the voice. God listened to them, and he delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities, and he called the name of the place Hormah, which means utterly destroyed. So with that destructive battle, that's going to send more fear to the kings up north as the children of Israel is going to proceed forward. All right. Now I'm going to read verse 4. All right. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom. So here we got to go around. They got to go around the land of Edom because Edom won't let them come through. And the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. So they're getting discouraged by the fact that they're going to have to take the hard road home instead of the short road. They're taking the long, hard road home. So that's probably a good source of their discouragement here. And this could also be considered another period of testing for these people as well, because this is, like I said, it's not every time something not easy. It's a time when God can see the mettle of these people, see what they're made of, see what they can do. All right, verse 5. And the people spake against God and against Moses. Wherefore have you brought us? Oh man, here we go again. This same complaint. Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loatheth this life bread. They're just getting to the point, they said there's no bread, but they've been sustained with manna all this time, but now they're complaining about what they've been provided. Okay. And remember, this is the new generation. This is the generation that God promised that they would go through there, because we're nearing the end of this 40-year period of time from leaving Egypt. So if this was a test like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that maybe this is a test for them to see how this next generation, well, it looks like they're failing right now if they're not, if they're complaining about God's provision. All right. And they're tired of manna. But something that come to my mind at this, they've been through this march. They've lost family members at different occasions, through battles and punishments and plagues by God. But these people, if you think about it, they have a tendency to still stick together and make it. They have not dispersed. I mean, they murmured and complained, but they're still sticking together. So God's still with them. I see that as a plus when I don't want to just beat down on them all the time, but give them a little credit. They don't just throw up their hands and all run in different directions. They're still staying together as a people. So God's still protecting them to some degree, even when they're murmuring and complaining. So that's a strong point that they have here under God's leadership, I think. That's 6 through 9. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord. All right. Well, at least once, at some point in time now, we've got an instance where this new generation is acknowledging they have sinned. They have done wrong. We ain't going into the land because there's giants in the land and we're like grasshoppers. We ain't going up there. And, they didn't jump up and tell Moses and God back then that, hey, we just ain't got no faith. We ain't going into it. At least this point in time, They have acknowledged they've sinned. They've acknowledged they've done wrong. This is their fault. They're doing this to God, and that's a good thing, really, even though it's bad that they've sinned. And against thee, pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten by those fiery serpents, of course, when he looketh upon it, shall live. And that's looking at this serpent that's been erected on a pole. And Moses made a serpent of brass, and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. And if you remember 2 weeks ago, I told you, and I think it's the book of Corinthians chapter 10, or maybe, I can't remember numbers all that good. I ain't like Steve. He can remember numbers. I get lost with numbers. But you remember Paul wrote, these things are written as an example. So some of the stuff we're reading and studying in this Old Testament, remember, Paul writes for our admonition. These things are examples, and it's like a picture of things in the future. So a lot of you people, a lot of you here, you know when you read this stuff, when these people look upon that serpent upon a pole and they realize they've sinned and they've brought this problem upon themselves, and God is offering them life from their own mistakes by looking upon that serpent, I shouldn't have to elaborate. That's for our admonition of what we see in the future. So, and that's where we're at. And some things to remember, the trend here, disobey God. Here again is another way of disobeying God. And it's in it, the punishment. I mean, they get punished or they die throughout this book of Numbers. But we've come to a point where they've acknowledged that they've failed here, and God's given them for an opportunity here to live by just by the fact that they just look upon that pole, upon that serpent, and they can live. And Moses prayed, of course, and and you can look all through the Old Testament trying to find some examples on trying to figure out what the brass serpent is. But the best I can do is I'm going to turn over to the book of John, chapter 3, and this is some Bible commentary from the book of John on the brass serpent. So this says it all. I should have had this marked already, but I can find it pretty good. John chapter 3. It's going to be verses 14 through 15. All right, and this here is a commentary from the book of John about what we just read about. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. And then the verses following that, you guys are all very familiar with that. So that's commentary from the book of John on what we just read there. And that's the best I can do. And these people had to have enough faith in God to look up and be saved. And saved from what was a certain death. They were going to die from the bite of the fiery serpent. And if they was faithful to look at that, they will live. All right, now I'm going to read verses 10. No, I guess I'm not. I didn't get as far as I'd like today, but anyway. Let me mark that in my Bible. If I don't do it now, sometimes I can't remember where I started and stopped, but I'll dismiss